Good Friday afternoon to you. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty to talk about this afternoon. A little later in the show, Ashley Bastock from cleveland.com and Plain Dealer will join us. We'll talk a little Cavs, a little All-Star, and a little Browns with Ashley. We begin by talking Browns as well. A lot of voicemails to get to. We're going to head straight to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This is about a couple of guys that this viewer would like the Browns to keep.
Hi, this is Jaron Ferguson of Shaker Heights, Ohio. I was just calling to ask if we can do anything to get Jadeveon Clowney back and Jarvis back in that locker room. If we can, I know we can go out and get the receiver that we need. If we can't draft Garrett, I think Garrett's going to fall to us. I think that's a great choice for us in the draft. If not, Malik Willis he's going to be on board. He's going to be on the board, but they're saying we're sticking with Baker. I do think it's a possibility if he does fall to the second round, we can grab him. Saw a mock draft earlier that Garrett didn't fall to the fell to the second round, and I think that's ridiculous. But if it happens, let's make it happen.
All right, we appreciate the voicemails as always. Let's welcome in Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. So Jeff, Clowney, Landry, what do you think? I think they might want to tweak the contract to Jarvis to keep him.
Yeah, and it's more of the deal of if they want to keep Jadeveon, they almost have to do something with Jarvis's contract. It doesn't mean letting him go. It might mean getting him to take a pay cut, converting some of his salary to a bonus, and extending a couple of void years on there. They have the opportunity to do that. They quite frankly can't afford Jadeveon Clowney on the open market as it is right now if they want to do some other things as well. Yeah, they got to prioritize that. How important is he? What would be the replacement cost to get somebody who could come in and start in his place? The guy's not on the roster right now, so you're looking at either your first draft pick or finding somebody in free agency, possibly a trade. Although it's really difficult to find pass rushers. I'm with the caller there. You got to do what you can to keep Clowney, because I do think that his versatility, his ability to play inside and outside, especially in this defense, makes a whole lot of sense. So he is certainly a priority. For Jarvis, you can replace what he does on the field, and you can do it much less expensively than what they're paying him. The question is, how much do you want to pay for his leadership, for his guidance, for his intangibles? Didn't really materialize all that well last year. It was a trying year, granted, on a lot of different fronts, so I'm not going to hold that against him. But if he wants to stay, he's probably going to have to take a pay cut. And I think the Browns are aware of that. I think that Landry's people are, quite frankly, aware of that as well.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to, does he really want to do that at this point in time in his career? He'd have to give up some money on the front end to extend him, so he'll get more money total, but it's going to be a decision that he has to make. I don't think there's any way Malik Willis falls to the second round whatsoever. I think he's more likely to go in the top 10 than he is to fall to the second round.
I'd tell you what, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with his draft stock. He got a lot of buzz coming out of Mobile last week. I was down there, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about the Senior Bowl when that. But yeah, it's tough to see him. I don't know, top 10, but top 15. It's really tough to see. If the Browns want him, they're going to have to take him with that first pick. He's not going to last. Remember, this is a guy who's very green. In that case, you really want that fifth-year option on your quarterback. That means picks 25 through 32 are prime territory to take Malik Willis. I don't see him falling past that.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, Jared Mueller, one of your colleagues, BrownsWire.com, did a mock-off season for the Browns. We're going to run through some of the things that he said, and then we'll react to it. So a healthy Baker Mayfield was first and foremost. Then the next thing was release J.C. Tretter, the Browns' starting center. We'll talk about that. We talked about this a little bit. Lower Landry's cap hit. That means extend him and get him for less. Then retain Clowney / bring back Sheldon Richardson. We kind of combined two there. Trade for Calvin Ridley and extend Denzel Ward, the outstanding cornerback who they still have the fifth-year option, but due for a new deal. When you look at that, let's start with the passing game, and there's a couple of things to that. Passing game needs to be significantly better for the Browns. Does a healthy Baker Mayfield address that? Maybe. Take us through some of the steps with that.
Yeah, and Baker has earned the shot, if he's healthy, to come back and be the starting quarterback. It doesn't mean that you have to sign him to an extension this offseason, but if you're letting him play next year as your starting quarterback, look, who's out there that's going to be better than him for this offense in 2022? It's tough to find somebody who would be affordable and available that can come in right away and do what Baker did with the same offense in 2020. Obviously, 2021, he didn't have a good year. People around him didn't have a good year either. They are a situation where I do expect a bounce back. I expect a better Baker with good health. So that's the fingers crossed there. And he's better with Jarvis Landry on the team than off the team. So restructuring that, like we just talked about, it makes a lot of sense for that. Jarvis, he's in a weird situation in that he's been a very productive receiver, but he's never been a game breaker. He's much better as not the number one receiver, but he's paid as a number one receiver. I think he needs to come to the realization that that's not tenable for his future anymore. He's got to choose whether he wants to break the bank or win. If he wants to win, honestly, there's not many places that need him that are better than Cleveland. So, I think that sort of weighs where they are with the passing game there.
Yeah, and another one, Denzel Ward has played, and he was healthy most of the year, played like a number one corner. I imagine Andrew Berry, the way this front office operates, they're going to pay him like a number one corner before too much longer here.
I would hope so. It is worth noting though that they did draft Greg Newsome last year. Obviously, Newsome is a very talented guy in his own right, but there were some who thought that this is insurance against Denzel Ward becoming too expensive or also being injured a lot. Now that you've got two of them, you're allocating a lot of resources there to the quarterback position. That, in my opinion, that's a good thing. I wonder how much they will value Denzel. I happen to think he's a local guy, very good in the community. When he's been on the field, he's been phenomenal. Was arguably the best cornerback in the league last year in coverage situations. You got to pay for that. You can't let that walk out the door. Even if third round comps picks be darned, you need that guy in the locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we've talked about Calvin Ridley. We'll talk about him a little bit more. They need to upgrade the wide receiver position to help Baker Mayfield or whomever the quarterback is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ridley's interesting because he took this past year off. He had some mental health issues that he wanted to sort out. He's a little bit older than you would expect. I think he's going to be 28 this coming season. Has been a good, not great receiver. He's talented. He's obviously, would be an upgrade over Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, the ghost of OBJ. He fits into that role nicely, but there's going to be other opportunities out there. There are other free agents that will be out there. There will be draft picks. Our first caller there brought up Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. He certainly makes a lot of sense. Treylon Burks from Arkansas makes a lot of sense in that same sort of role. That would be cheaper than what it would take to get Ridley. So it's worth exploring, but I wouldn't necessarily get shoehorned in on one specific guy there. You're absolutely right though. They have to upgrade the receiving talent. This is one of the options that will do it.
All right, so we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one revolves around the Browns offense.
I still think Baker can do it. I really do. I think in a different situation and with maybe a little bit different playbook, open things up a little bit, spread the field out instead of, somebody said 80% three tight ends. That's not going to work. Also, too, you give them a couple of receivers, a couple of good offensive linemen in front of him, and I think I think he can do the job. Why mortgage the farm?
And again, Jeff, we kind of got into this conversation yesterday in talking about there was something that had them trading for Kyler Murray, and my response was you'd have to completely change the offense, and the follow-up was, well, why not change it for Baker Mayfield? And it's a valid question because you're not playing to his strengths currently the way the offense was put together.
Right, and I put that on Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt and the coaching staff more than I put it on Baker. Baker, we know what Baker is. I think the NFL has a pretty good idea of what Baker is. I would like to see them ask him to do a little bit more running and gunning, so to speak. He's good when he has to make those decisions when the field is spread out. But the personnel didn't necessarily dictate that. I think, and this is just my take on it, is that Stefanski and Van Pelt saw, okay, we don't have great wide receiving talent. We've got 3 pretty darn good tight ends. We can run the ball pretty well. Let's button it up. Let's avoid mistakes. Let's avoid, getting 3rd and 10 all the time because the wide receivers down the field just aren't viable options. Let's move the chains. Let's play to our offensive strengths personnel-wise instead of playing to your quarterback strengths personnel-wise. There's a place in the middle there where they can meet and get better with Baker and with the personnel that they've got. So I'm hopeful. Look, Kevin Stefanski's a very smart guy. At this time last year, we were celebrating him being Coach of the Year. How things have changed a little bit. I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's smart enough to figure out a way to play more to Baker's strengths without getting away from what the offense is set up to do as well. There is a blend there. They got to find it, though.
All right, Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason about the wide receiving core. We'll also take a look at some Senior Bowl prospects that Jeff saw last week. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. Time for us to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Jarvis Landry.
Hi, I was just calling to weigh in on the Jarvis Landry situation, and I think he had a great career with Cleveland and been a good team player, but isn't the slot receiver one of the easier positions to replace? That's all I wanted to ask. Thanks a lot.
All right, again, we appreciate all the voicemails, and we'll get to a few more of them. Jeff, when you look at it, in theory, that is correct. The slot receiver isn't the guy that stretches the field and does that. He does a lot of work that a lot of guys don't want to do, being Jarvis Landry, and he does it really well.
He does, but it's a very smart point. It is easier to find a slot receiver than it is to find an all-pro on the outside. Now, Jarvis is a tremendous blocker. And I say this fully knowing that when I write up draft prospects and wide receivers, and if one of the first 3 things that I mention is they're blocking, I probably don't want them on my team because you want them to be better at receiving. But he's really good at that. He can play outside. He has the ability to line up inside or outside. If you've got somebody else who can do that, that allows you to dictate some matchups and create mismatches against the defense. It allows the offense to dictate to the defense what's going to happen. Landry's a really good piece in that role. We've seen him throw the ball. We've seen him be a gadget player. Does a lot of the things really, really well. He's always where he needs to be on his routes, too. In Kevin Stefanski's offense, that's important. You've got to be when and where you're supposed to be, even if the ball isn't coming your way. Jarvis is exceptional at that. The professionalism that he shows in his route running is important. It will take some time for a rookie slot receiver or somebody that you find off the street to make up for that. But it can be done, and it can certainly be done for a lot cheaper. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to weigh with Jarvis Landry on it. But yeah, that's it speaks to how important he is that we're having so many conversations about Jarvis Landry today. When this is a guy, quite frankly, not coming off of a good year, but it still sounds like most people want to keep him around and get him out of, obviously on a better budget. But they understand the importance of what he does to the offense, and that's. I hope AB's listening over there in Berea because, look, there's a lot of people that really want Juice back, and some of them are in my immediate family there too. They're big Juice fans. He's been a big part of this renaissance in Cleveland. It would be nice for him to still be part of it as it goes forward. Yeah, and I'm sure Andrew Berry's locked to this. Our show every day. 4 o'clock, he's got it blocked out. All right, you were in Mobile. Take us through some of the prospects that intrigued you, some guys that Browns fans should listen out for that you think could fit well with the Browns. Yeah, and first of all, I will preface this, but I actually met Andrew Berry for the very first time in person last week in Mobile, which was kind of cool. So that was nice. One of the players that I know he was looking at was Christian Watson, wide receiver from North Dakota State. He was the standout wide receiver in Mobile. Big guy, he's 6'4", 215 pounds, runs very well. He needs some work. This is not a guy that's going to come in and he's not going to set NFL records like in rookies the way we've seen Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle do. This is a guy who can come in. He's a souped up version of Hollywood Higgins in the Browns offense. And I think we all could appreciate that. A guy that's going to go, if he's there in the second round, he's certainly in consideration for the Browns. I don't buy the talk that he's going into the first round. He's just not that developed. It's a leap of faith to take a D2 wide receiver or an FCS level wide receiver that high. Of course, Cooper Kupp is the same status. He's not exactly Cooper Kupp, but he has that sort of potential if it all comes together for him. To go to a slot receiver, Braylon Sanders from Ole Miss is a guy instantly open, human joystick. In the way that Eric Metcalf could move laterally as fast as he moved forward, that's what this guy does. He also has some punt return experience, so he's one you're looking, fourth, fifth round. Not everybody's going to be a first-round pick, and I think one of the things that I love about Browns fans is that they appreciate the depth of the draft better than a lot of other fan bases. So when you're looking and digging, these are guys to look at.
All right.
There's an interesting one. Go ahead.
No. Finish thought.
Yeah. One of the guys that I know that Barry was personally investigating, and I don't know his opinion on it, Central Michigan offensive tackle Bernard Ryman. He's a foreign exchange student originally from Austria. He's an Austrian national. Played at Central Michigan. Often, giant guy. It's interesting because he doesn't fit what they normally look for. He's inexperienced in football. He's going to be 25 years old in September. Hasn't played against any real NFL competition. I think there's going to be one pass rusher from the MAC that gets drafted this year, and I'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, he's a very intriguing guy. He had a very nice week, had a phenomenal season at Central Michigan for the Chippewas. One of the other guys, if you're looking at another, and Ryman, by the way, you're probably gonna have to get him in the first round. I don't think he's gonna be there in the second. That's how good of a week and how good of a buzz he's got right now. That'll change, of course, as the combine comes up in a couple weeks. But right now, if you want him, you're gonna have to go big. But addressing offensive tackle is something that they probably need to do with Jack Conklin's injuries and uncertainty, and Jedrick Wills sort of plateauing where he's at. I know that's a priority. It would be nice to see them address it. He's certainly one that fits. Dominique Robinson is the pass rusher. He played wide receiver for Miami, the Redhawks. Switched to defensive line 2 years ago. You can tell that he's still learning the position, but my goodness, that guy is incredible. He still moves like a wide receiver as a 255-pound pass rusher. That's a guy that's got tremendous upside. If you're going to watch the Super Bowl this Sunday, and who isn't, watch Trey Hendrickson for the Bengals, because that's what this guy can be for the Browns. A stand-up, pass-rushing edge, pass-rush specialist only. This is not a guy that you want to play on rundowns. But when you want to bring in a NASCAR package, you want to kick Garrett or Clowney inside and have a speed rusher off the edge, Dominique Robinson from Miami will do that. And I say that, it's tough for me to praise a Miami guy as an Ohio Bobcat, but you got to give respect sometimes.
He was a high school quarterback at Canton McKinley and was a pretty good one. He was recruited initially to Miami as a wide receiver. So he's got decent hands, too. All right, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about a trade idea for the Browns.
Yes, I had an idea for a trade for a wide receiver. I figured since D'Ernest Johnson is going to be coming up as a restricted, sign him, package him up for a wide receiver around the league, see what we can get. I don't know what you guys think, how possible that is or whatever. And then what do you guys think, if any, there will be some repercussions around involving the league and the rules regarding players being released mid-season and just basically being able to leverage themselves against a team to become a free agent halfway through the season and then go play for a Super Bowl?
I'm intrigued, the D'Ernest Johnson. If people value him highly enough, that's an interesting piece. It's your third running back. You've got Chubb locked up. You've got Hunt locked up. If you can get somebody that you think is a really good wide receiver, that's intriguing. I don't think the league's going to do anything. I mean, the Browns could have held Odell Beckham Jr. hostage if they wanted to. Andrew Berry did the right thing by allowing him to go out and sign with another team. And you know what? That's the right thing to do, because that will help you sign somebody. You know, if you're going to do right by the players, free agents are going to understand that as well.
They will, and that is something that they'll look at, and agents will look at that as well. Odell, look, did he force his way out? Yeah, probably. He could have done a lot more if he wanted to stay in Cleveland. It's clear that he didn't want to be here. Holding him hostage doesn't make a lot of sense, just in the same way that we saw with the NBA trade deadline. It was pretty clear that James Harden was done in Brooklyn. You got to do something to do that. It's interesting that they traded him to Philadelphia, and as a Cavs fan, that makes me a little disappointed, because that hurts the Cavs' chances. But back to D'Ernest. He's your number 3 running back, like you said. He's a restricted free agent. It's going to cost about $2.4 million for 1 year to tender him. In an ideal situation, he gets what, 50 carries on the season? He's not your punt returner. He's not your kick returner. That's a lot for a guy that you hope to not have to use. Now, obviously, it's fantastic to have that insurance, and he's proven that he's a starting caliber running back. They just happen to have 2 other ones in Cleveland right now. So if you can get something for him back in return, absolutely. And to advance that a little bit, he is in a great position where you sign him to the restricted free agent tender, so he's locked in for the year. Then you package him with a draft pick to get a higher up caliber of wide receiver. Just throwing this out there, if Dallas decides that they want to keep or get rid of Amari Cooper, that you give them D'Ernest Johnson. Of course, they don't need a running back, but you give them D'Ernest Johnson and maybe a second-round pick, and that's how you make a deal like that. He is a definite trade chip that they can use over draft weekend. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it. I fully expect them to do the tender offer and bring him back, but it's a very interesting point. It's a very good idea by the caller there.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com, and I'm going to step aside, take another time out on the other side of the break. More voicemails of truth and reason. This one looking at what the Browns did against some pretty good teams. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns. Time for us to head back to the voicemail and truth and reason. This is about the Browns offense.
I'm calling about the Browns, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things about the season in 2021. Look at the Cincinnati game. Look at the game against the Chargers. We put up a lot of points that game, and Baker wasn't hurt. I think that was a huge deal. I do believe his injury was a big deal. And even though he tried to be brave and have courage and, muscle through it, he thought he could do well, he didn't do as well as he thought he could. And I agree with the prior comments that, unfortunately, they probably should have taken him out and sat him down. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I love the show. Look forward to hearing from you soon. Be well.
As always, appreciate it. And, Jeff, we kind of got into that a little bit yesterday. At some point, you have to weigh. He's just not playing like we're not getting what we need from him, and you need to kind of pull it back. And the Browns obviously thought he gave him the best chance to win. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep putting him out there.
Right, especially when you have Case Keenum, one of the highest-paid backups in the league. Kevin Stefanski has seen him firsthand take a team to the playoffs before and do very successful. The fact that they kept him in there, again, we've talked about this before. That tells me how highly they value Baker Mayfield and how good they think he is, how important they think he is. Because, again, Case Keenum is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. They're not going to find a better system backup than Keenum anywhere. And again, they were paying him a lot of money to not play. That shows you how much confidence they have in Baker. To the caller's point, they did very well against some very good teams. For me, the big issue this year was that the offense and the defense were ships passing in the night. The defense struggled early when the offense was working. Then the defense got it figured out, and Baker's injury, the offensive line injuries, the wide receiver issues, they took the team in the other direction. If you can put those two hands together, man, you got a really good team that can again get back to winning playoff games, plural, next year. It's got to happen, though. And Baker's got to be healthy to do it, and you've got to keep building forward. I don't like the idea of scrapping everything and starting over with a new quarterback. Somebody referenced trading for Kyler Murray. You're asking a whole lot of change there, and you're going to have to get a lot different style of receivers into town to work with him. There's ripple effects there. This team is designed offensively to work with the run game going forward. Very strong run game. We talked about the depth that they have at running back. Good tight ends. Baker Mayfield making good, smart decisions, manipulating the defense, working the play action, and not making mistakes. He made too many mistakes even when he was healthy. That's something that he's got to go with. But the potential, again, it's there, man. It really is. I like the idea of Baker having the chip on his shoulder to come back and prove to everybody, that they're probably burying him a little too quickly. Will it work? Who knows? But I think Baker has earned that right. I think that's when he's at his best, is when he's got a little bit of fire in his belly there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. All right, we're going to take a look at 3 wide receiver trade targets for the Browns in 2022. This is from Dog Pound Daily. Wide receivers, Brandon Cooks, number 3. Number 2, I love this guy. I don't think there's any way you're going to trade for him, though. DK Metcalf is number 2. And the top one is really intriguing. Michael Thomas from the Saints sat out the entire season. Remember, they're going through a change with Sean Payton stepping away. Now Dennis Allen is the head coach. So that's an intriguing one. The health is interesting and it's questioned. When you look at that, the important thing to remember here is, not a lot of guys are going to be jumping up and down to sign with this offense. So the best route to get a pretty good wide receiver may be to trade for it.
And that's how they got Landry, and that's how they got Odell once upon a time, was trading them. The drafting hasn't gone all that well for a wide receiver. They still got potential, but you need to start seeing a lot more from that potential. Michael Thomas is a very interesting one because, and as it alluded to in the copy there, he probably could have played in 2021 if he really needed to. I think he was being extra cautious with his ankle. He had surgery. He had to have a second surgery on it, is my understanding, because the first one just didn't go right. But this guy, look, caught more passes over a 2-year span in 2018 and 2019 than any player in professional football history. He is instantly open. He is a wide target. He fits the role of where quite frankly, the Browns offense likes to hit it, that 8 to 12 yard range. He's not good after the catch. He's sometimes apathetic as a blocker. But if you need a guy to just get volume targets, volume catches, he's great at that. And based on where he's at in his career, he probably needs the redemption. So that's an interesting one. The Saints, they have to get rid of money. They are currently $75 million over the salary cap. They have ways of getting that a lot easier, but that's certainly an easier way. They are a team, by the way, with Alvin Kamara's arrest last weekend, that could have some interest in Dearness Johnson, to reference back to our past caller. That's certainly one to look at. DK Metcalf, I don't buy for a minute that Seattle is trying to get rid of him. I also don't buy that Russell Wilson is going to be out of there until I actually see it for my own eyes. It certainly makes sense for them to consider it, but I don't see that one. Brandon Cooks, who knows what's going on with the Texans? They are they're a very frustrating mess. And I say that as someone I live in a house full of Houston Texans fans. We lived there for several years, so my kids are Texans fans. They're not too happy with the progress of the team there. Cooks is a very talented receiver, and he also fits in the OBJ role. And quite frankly, probably fits a little bit better there because he does a little bit less improvisation with his routes. That's a player that you would certainly look at. He's got to make less. I think he's due for $16.5 million next year. Browns can't pay him that, just as they can't pay Jarvis Landry close to that. But if he's amenable to working out a new deal as part of the trade, And again, the Texans also happen to need a running back. Just throw that out there. That's one that I like. I like the sound of that one. That Cooks fits in. He's one of those guys. He's never been like the heralded guy. If you look at his career stats, this guy's been really productive with a lot of different quarterbacks and a lot of different offenses. To me, that shows that he's a fairly safe acquisition if you want to bring him in. So that's certainly one to keep an eye on.
All right. Before we go to break, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield.
As to the comment that I watched by the gentleman saying that Baker was making bad decisions, that his injury had nothing to do with his bad decisions, had everything to do with his bad decisions. You don't have the confidence because your arm's not strong enough. You don't have the zip behind it to make certain plays. Then you're going to start making alternate decisions, which aren't going to be very good. If he had the strength in his arm and his shoulder, he's got a gun for an arm. We know he does. He would have made those throws, but he didn't have confidence in his throws because he didn't have the strength. So it had everything to do with his decision making.
I don't get from A to B with the caller there. I understand what he's saying, but decisions are, okay, I know I don't have the strength in my arm, so I don't make that throw.
Right. And then that reflects back to why is he playing? You know, when you've got Case Keenum who fits and will make the decisions that you know that the coach wants, that they're not playing him. But the caller's absolutely right. Baker did know the limitations of his arm once he was injured, and that did change the way that he played quarterback. I'll go back to it again. If he's that limited and that incapable of doing what you need him to do, he shouldn't have been playing. And I'm not going to put that on Baker. I'm going to put that on the offensive coaching staff, and that's something that they're going to have to answer for. And I know that that's a conversation that they're going to have. Why when they look back and self-scout the season, and I'm sure they're doing that already. Maybe we should have done it. Maybe we should have listened to reason. Maybe we should have relied on the high-paid backup that we brought in. Because one thing that's going to do, if you're another backup quarterback now, you really want to go there and take less money because they've obviously devalued the position. So you're not going to get as much money. You know that you're not going to play unless, God forbid, Baker's arm actually falls off. I mean, they're leaving him out there. It's going to make finding a backup quarterback that much more difficult, and they're certainly not going to pay Case Keenum to come back again. So, hopefully Kyle Lauletta or Nick Mullins is up for the task. But again, there's a lot of ripple effects for what happened last season. That's going to be one of them.
Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com and I going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, more voicemails of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns football. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about what this viewer sees in the postseason teams.
I saw a statistic that read 4 of the 5 leading receivers in the NFL made it to the postseason, while only 2 of the top 5 leading rushers made it to the postseason. You guys have been talking about it all week. You had a caller touched on it a little bit yesterday. I think that says a lot, speaks a lot to our scheme, the game plan, and the way that the team was built to win. What I wanted to ask you guys, though, is that Aaron Rodgers won the MVP. Is the MVP award a little bit diluted, being that it always becomes the best regular season quarterback usually, and there hasn't been an MVP to win a Super Bowl since '99 at Kurt Warner? Just wondering what you guys think, man. Let's hear it. Thanks. Bye.
Appreciate the voicemails as always. And Jeff, the rules skew towards being passing. It's a passing league, has been for the last few years, and they seem to make the rules more and more that way. They do vote for the MVPs and those league honors before the postseason, so I get that. There's a different MVP. You know, the Super Bowl MVP is a big thing as well. But yeah, I could see where you almost need a playoff MVP as well if you want to break it down the way it currently is. But I get where the viewer's going. What I would say is this league is a passing league. The Browns are kind of bucking the trend by being a run-oriented offense.
They are, and the Tennessee Titans have done that as well. The thing with the Titans, though, they traded for Julio Jones. They've got A.J. Brown, who's one of the most gifted receivers in the league. Even when Derrick Henry went down, they didn't fall off. In fact, they wound up carrying that on to the #1 seed. Obviously, it didn't help them in the postseason, but that they had the ability to win via the ground and the air. That's when Lamar Jackson has been at his best in Baltimore as well, when he's been able to throw the ball down the field. Mark Andrews, phenomenal tight end. They do it a little bit differently than a lot of other teams. But the ability to blend that. If you look at the Rams this season, when they've been at their best is when they do have Cam Akers in or somebody else running the ball effectively just enough so not everything is on Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods at the time and now OBJ. The ability to have that balance, the fact that the Browns can rip off so many big runs and get productive, big chunk plays out of their offense, it makes them a unique challenge. It makes them difficult, but it's also difficult to rely on that as your sole means of getting big plays. And last year, the big plays in the passing game, they just weren't there. They're not getting the downfield pass interference calls either, where the famous Joe Flacco, let's have the receiver run at 50 yards, he'll throw it 40 and get held coming back, and that boom, there's your offense. You're in field goal range already. The Browns don't do that. That's just not something that's in their design. It would behoove them to become better at passing, but if they can do it without sacrificing much out of the run, because Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, it does make them a unique team to play. It's a very difficult thing to prepare for, especially if you're coming off of playing a game. Let's say in the schedule, you've played the Bengals the week before. Now, Joe Mixon is no slouch at running back, obviously, but you're dealing with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, C.J. Uzomah, Joe Burrow able to throw the ball all over the field to any of those guys. That's a very different style of defense that you have to play against the Cleveland Browns. That does give the Browns an advantage to some extent, but if they stop the run, the pass has to be there. And that we've been talking about all day. That was the problem in 2021. The passing game just wasn't reliable enough to pick up when the run game wasn't there.
Yeah, and the thing that I would say, you need a receiver that the defense is threatened by, that somebody that they're going, man, we got to make sure this guy doesn't beat us. That guy isn't on the Browns right now. Jarvis Landry is a good receiver, but the defense isn't. So let's take a look at 3 wide receivers for the Browns that could make Baker Mayfield look viable, as it is put by Fansided. Number 1, Allen Robinson from the Bears. Number 2, Mike Williams from the LA Chargers. And number 3, Chris Godwin from the Buccaneers. Now, he's got an ACL that he just underwent surgery not too long ago, so that's a concern. When you look at those 3, those guys are receivers that the defense has to worry about. Which of the 3 do you like the best?
Boy, if Godwin was healthy, he'd be an easy answer, but he's not. We've seen what happens with receivers coming off of ACLs. Do they rush it? Do they nurse it coming back? Does it impact their play? Do they nurse? Are they worried about injuring the other knee so much? I'm done with that, quite frankly. I think probably a lot of Browns fans are done with that as well. Great player, but unless that bill of health comes back, clean and he's going to be ready to go for the preseason, it's tough to risk the money on that. So from that standpoint, I like Williams a lot. He is a downfield playmaker, but he also can turn a quick bubble screen into something. That's something that Justin Herbert and the Chargers did very well, was use his downfield, his ability to win down the field, and then shorten the routes up and have him win short, and then use his physicality after the catch to win. He would be a very nice fit out there. And by the way, he's a guy that would fit very well with Jarvis Landry playing inside him in the slot. I like that combination a lot. That's something that you definitely have to look at. Thing is, though, he's going to be in high demand. You're going to have to outbid some other teams to get him. That's going to require some other moves, which we talked about it earlier. You might be choosing between keeping Jadeveon Clowney or adding Mike Williams. That's off the top of my head, I don't know what I'd do with that, quite honestly. I would probably lean more towards Clowney, but these are the decisions that you have to make. He's not going to be cheap. You're looking at $12 to $14 million a year as a receiver. That's a lot of money to pay a wide receiver on a ground-based offense. Do they need to do it? Heck yeah, they do. Will they do it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's, you know what, Andrew Berry has to make those decisions. First 2 years, you've liked what you've seen from him, so let's see what he works with and how he remakes this roster. Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com, and as always, Jeff, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure, and go Cavs.
All right, Jeff Risdon, you can read him, BrownsWire.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield.
I was calling in. This is a topic about Baker Mayfield. Huge fan. Moved to Texas. Actually up the road from where he used to live when he was in Texas. But my question is, why are the fans so harsh on a quarterback that has given everything that he can, not only to this franchise, but to our community?
All right, let's welcome in Ashley Bastock from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. And Ashley, there is not a more polarizing figure right now than Baker Mayfield. And it's divided pretty evenly. There is the harsh factor, but there are some that don't think he can get any wrong. And as usual, I think it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I was going to say that's such an existential question to start off this final segment on a Friday about why is there so much divide. Well, to answer that very basic question, I think there's so much divide in large part because of this season kind of exasperating questions that people have always had about Baker Mayfield, right? Like they've always wondered about how good he is outside of being able to do those bootlegs and those rollouts and things like that he really can excel at. There's also obviously some size questions about how well he can process. But I would say that on the very basic level is a why. It has to do with his performance on the field. But they're 100%, I think this is the biggest divide among the Browns fan base is how fans feel about Baker Mayfield. Because there certainly is a segment of fans, I think, who believe Baker can do no wrong and are appreciative of everything he's done. But I do think there is another segment of fans who may be appreciative for what he's done, especially throughout the 2020 season, but they just don't think he's the guy long term. And over at cleveland.com, we did our Mayfield Matrix series where we kind of looked at all these different options for what it could look like keeping Baker Mayfield around long term potentially. And at the end, we polled readers, and the top three options all got between like 23 and 25%. And one of those options was to bring in a veteran to work behind Baker Mayfield and possibly compete for the starting job. Another option was to kind of go all in on Baker, but wait to give him an extension until after the 2022 season. And the other option, if you can believe it, was trade him for somebody else. So if that doesn't say divided, I don't know what does.
Yeah, and you know, until you really see what happens next year and what the Browns do leading up to next year, we don't really know how the front office feels about him for 100% certain either. Along those lines, let's take a look at this. This is from the Bleacher Report. And they come out and say the Browns must draft a quarterback day 2. So that would be the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Create competition, a fallback option. It would also give the opportunity to prove himself in the 5th year of his contract. So I do think at some point they need to get a younger quarterback. They obviously didn't have one as backup. What are your thoughts? Do you think they take somebody in the first 3 rounds as a quarterback?
I still think, like, for me, there are more pressing needs. Like, it's going to take a lot, and it's going to take a big free agency move for me to get off of. They need to get a receiver in the 1st round. And I think other than that, like, some other pressing positions for them would be to get another edge rusher if Clowney leaves, to get better at that defensive tackle spot. And the reality of the situation is we all know this quarterback draft is not super deep. And, like, a guy like Kenny Pickett is probably going to go even before the Browns get to draft in the 1st round, but there just aren't a ton of guys. A guy like Malik Willis, I'm curious to see how his draft stock rises out of Liberty. But again, that's another smaller quarterback. So kind of wondering some similarities with Baker Mayfield there. But I don't know that it is a necessarily they must draft somebody this year, because obviously, again, when we did that series, there were a ton of different options. And another option would be to bring in a veteran who, maybe isn't going to immediately be a starter right away. And we were jokingly calling it the Teddy Bridgewater option. Like, it's kind of a guy like that who could come in and it's believable that he could be a backup and he could compete with Baker Mayfield and potentially has some upside. So I do think there are other ways around needing to draft somebody necessarily, considering the other needs this team has.
Yeah, I would agree. And the only thing I would say is if Andrew Berry and the front office absolutely falls in love with somebody at the quarterback position, which they could, if they think this guy has the ability to be a starter in the league, then I could see them, taking them in the 2nd. Well, if they fall in love with Willis, I could see them, if he slides to 13, taking him. But it has to be somebody you are sure you feel really good about, I think.
And who they feel really good about being able to run Kevin Stefanski's system, I think. And when we talk about, me and my colleagues about receivers they could bring in, like, we think it's important to bring in a younger receiver who you can mold in a somewhat strange offense where receivers aren't necessarily putting up huge numbers. Like, you need to get a guy in on the ground floor and explain, this is what we need you to do. We don't need you to be getting 200 yards every single game. Like, just, it allows them a chance to get a guy that they think fits their culture and fits this specific system that Kevin Stefanski developed. So that certainly is an option. If there's a guy you feel like you can't pass up and you have an opportunity to go get him, we've seen how Andrew Berry operates. Not many GMs would be trading up to get a linebacker in round 2, right? I don't know how many people expected that to happen with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but he saw a guy that he thought would fit this team, and it was a home run pick last year.
Yeah, agree that, again, and Andrew Berry has somewhat earned the benefit of the doubt with the last 2 drafts. All right, let's take a look. D'Ernest Johnson, who when the running back core was beat up, stepped up in a couple of games and performed very well. He was on the Today Show on NBC. Let's listen to D'Ernest.
For anybody that's not living their dream, what does it take?
It just takes a lot of hard work and just not giving up at all. You got a dream and you just got to chase it no matter what, no matter how many doors are closed on you. You just got to keep going and just keep fighting every day.
Well, that's a beautiful sentiment. But sometimes when all the doors shut, you say, how am I ever going to get through? On your darkest moments where you wondered, is this really my path? Like, what made you get up and say, one more day, just one more day?
Just having that support system around me, and then having a kid, a son I had to take care of. So, that was my biggest thing, just making sure I do everything right for him, just to have a better life than what I did growing up. And I just had to every day, just talk to God and pray and just keep working.
And Ashley, that's a guy that was working on a fishing boat before the Browns signed him. So it's nice to see him kind of sharing his story and on the in conjunction with the Olympics, kind of making dreams come true is the reason that he was on there.
Yeah, in conjunction with the Olympics, the Super Bowl, it's kind of a nice lead in. You know, obviously, I think Cleveland fans, especially diehard Browns fans, are very familiar with D'Ernest Johnson's story at this point. And especially, I think it got, recovered a lot after that Thursday night game when he really shone through for the first time this year against the Broncos. So I think it just is a really nice opportunity to, the Today Show isn't going to necessarily have a ton of viewers who are diehard football fans or even diehard sports fans. So it definitely is a nice feel-good story for a guy who really produced in a somewhat small sample size this year. And again, I think that his story is a part of what made him such a special player for the Browns this year. And he's a guy you look at, the one stat we love to talk about him is PFF does elusiveness ratings. And he had the top elusiveness rating in the league out of all running backs. So just a guy overall who it's nice to see recognized for some of this success, because a few years ago, no one even knew who D'Ernest Johnson was in terms of NFL stats or things like that. So just a really, really nice story going into the Super Bowl this weekend.
Ashley Bastock from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to NBA All-Star Weekend and the Cavs. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The daughter of a sharecropper, Jane Hunter founded the Phyllis Wheatley Association in 1911. For 37 years, Hunter guided the association as it provided single African-American women with job training skills and adequate housing. Her unceasing energy made the Phyllis Wheatley Association synonymous with quality training and served as a model for 9 similar institutions across the United States. Today, Jane Hunter's vision lives on at the Phyllis Wheatley Association.
We turn our attention to All-Star Weekend and Myles Garrett. Kevin Stefanski retired him from basketball before the beginning of the season. Well, guess what? He is back. Myles Garrett on Instagram announcing that he will be part of the Celebrity All-Star Game here in Cleveland. And Ashley, when you look at this, all I can see is some poor guy in this All-Star game either getting caught under him or going up for a shot and having Myles Garrett just completely block his shot. That is not a guy that I've played in those, and I would not want any part of that guy on the basketball court.
Yeah, when the All-Star rosters were announced, I think I tweeted something to the effect of, well, this is great that Myles is getting a chance to play, but who is going to guard him? My best chance based on how they, or my best guess based on how they decided these teams is it might have to be Anderson Varejao, obviously a familiar face for Cavs fans. Varejao has the size, but looking at that other team, I don't know that there's anybody that really has the combination of size and speed to actually effectively be able to stop one of the best edge rushers in all of the NFL. So I'm going to that game on Friday, mainly with the goal of seeing Myles Garrett up close in person and play basketball. But yeah, I was laughing because when they announced that, the first thing I thought of was what you mentioned there, that Kevin Stefanski joking in the offseason last summer that Myles was retired from playing. So I was a little surprised to see his name there, quite honestly. But I know what a great opportunity that'll be for him.
Now, the other thing that I thought was really interesting is the new mayor, Justin Bibb, is on Myles' team. So the mayor is a good decision right there by the mayor. Make sure you are on the team with Myles Garrett. All right, let's turn our attention to the Cavs. A real nice pickup, I think, Karis LeVert. Listen to what Jared Allen had to say about why J.B. Bickerstaff is the right coach for this team.
It's how he interacts with us. He's able to, be the dominant figure as the head coach, keep us in line and everything. But at the same time, he's able to connect with us as players. He's always making jokes with us, keeping us in line, always showing us that he's been in our shoes. He has clever comebacks. And the way he fights for us on the court, too. The way he will always step up, tell a ref that, it should be a foul, it shouldn't be a foul. He's never going to back down from anything.
And Ashley, they're right in the middle of the Eastern Conference race. The way things are going to shake out with the Nets and the Sixers, it's going to be tough for them to kind of advance. But keep in mind, young team, growing, and the right coach. So it's just see where they can go. Don't put any expectations on them. See where they can go.
Yeah, I think there's only like 6.5 games that separate the top 7 teams in the Eastern Conference right now. I mean, you can't even begin to predict where the Cavs are going to fall and all of that. But the good thing about them is they faced obviously so much adversity recently in terms of just guys being out. Like Lauri Markkanen missing as much time as he has been a huge blow because he's such a key part of their signature big lineup since he plays the 3 and he's a 7-footer. Obviously, they've been without Darius Garland. They went without him for 4 straight games. He's not going to play tonight against Indiana, dealing with that low back soreness again. And the way the Cavs have just managed to fight through so much, I think is a credit to them. It's a credit to the job JV Bickerstaff has done. And kind of going along with what Jarrett Allen was saying, my impression of him is so much so that he just really trusts these guys that he has. He doesn't micromanage them out on the court, so much so that he's talked about, the Cavs, when you watch their offense, they don't run a set every time down the court. He's not calling a play every time down the court. A lot of what they do is just guys knowing each other really well at this point, and him giving them the freedom to freelance and kind of look for each other and find the best possible play without having to get set, slow everything down, and call something. So I think that's also an underrated part of their success this year.
I agree wholeheartedly. Ashley Bastock, Ashley, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, Ashley Bastock, you can read her at Pages the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Before we go, we are going to take time to recognize a role model student. Each week, in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery and Partners in Education program, we recognize role model students from all across the state of Ohio. Today, we head to Stowe High School, and J.R. Reed, a star not only on the mat, but in the classroom as well. J.R. Reed, our Ohio Lottery Partners in Education Shining Star. J.R. Reed is a two-sport star for the Stowe Bulldogs in both football and wrestling. Last year as a junior, Reed went to states and won a couple of matches at 152. But like any talented wrestler, he's always focused on getting better.
I don't know if there's anything that I'm really good at. I don't know. Maybe I'm pretty good for my feet, I would say. Getting off bottom. It's something I haven't been very good with lately. He's really put a lot of time into developing himself as an athlete in the weight room. He's grown. I think his freshman year he wrestled 126 pounds. Now he started this year at 175 pounds. So he's grown a lot. And he's put a lot of time into developing that strength and all that kind of stuff. So he's a strong wrestler. He's long. He's able to hit a lot of moves that other people aren't able to because of his length. He's tall. He's got long arms, things like that. But at the same time, he puts a lot of time into it, really, and he just works really hard.
Reed is having a very good senior season as well. He's always looking for that edge. He's approaching 30 wins on the season with just 4 losses.
He's a thinker, and almost to the point where us as coaches try to get him to stop thinking, because he thinks a lot about his matches, and almost he's thinking during his match. Like if something didn't go the way he thought it should go, he's sort of thinking about why that didn't happen. He's very analytical in that way. And so us as coaches are almost like, you've been wrestling for so long, just stop thinking and let your body react, almost kind of thing, you know? So it's really good because he is into learning and trying to develop different skills and learn from his matches. But at the same time, sometimes we get him to try to stop thinking a little bit and just wrestle.
Being cerebral is just the way JR is in pretty much everything he does. In the classroom, Reed is #1 in his class academically. Next year, he'll head off to college as a junior academically. He's been excelling at college-level classes for a couple of years.
A well-rounded student athlete. I mean, he's one of the best I've ever been in contact with, ever coached. He academically challenges himself. Like I think he told you, he started taking CCP classes when he was a sophomore in high school. I mean, he's who does that, you know? I mean, he goes out to the college campus as a, I don't know, you know, 14, 15-year-old and goes and takes those classes and is confident enough to do that in his academic abilities.
I'm taking like a core class at Kent State. I'm taking chemistry, biology, intro to sociology.
JR hasn't decided which college he'll attend, but he knows what he wants to major in: engineering, and likely mechanical engineering.
I've always liked putting things together and stuff like that. Like I was a big Lego kid, stuff like that. It's always like, and every time I've taken like, where we took those like career tests in some class or whatever, and it's always came back like engineering, like architecture type, like, so probably like civil engineering or like mechanical, more like hands-on putting things together.
If you connect the dots, there's some application to his work in the classroom and on the wrestling mat.
You're thinking about how something will work or different aspects of like a move or something. Like if your hand's here, it'll work differently. If your leg's here, it'll work differently. And I think you can think of that same way in engineering. Like if something's this way, it'll work this way. And it's just like different positions like will work differently, you know.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. All right, well done, J.R. Reed from Stowe. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest, Scott Patrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. That's Monday at 4. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend, everybody.